Okay, amazing. Wow. Thank you everyone for coming. I understand that it's hard to come out to downtown Vancouver, the heart of Gotham almost it feels like at times, on a busy Thursday afternoon, but we are gathered here for a very important conversation. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Kabir Qurban, and I'm honored to have Brother Hasan Alam here. Before we get started, I want to talk about a few instances that took place and why it is that this conversation is being held in this building. Just on Saturday, July 18th, a Muslim woman was attacked in a parking lot in Moncton, and bystanders were just left there watching. Nobody did anything to stand up. Then in Montreal, this past weekend in Vardan, a plastic bag with a prop severed hand was thrown within a bag full of fake blood in front of the masjid as an attempt to scare us away. Even the advertisements that we had for this event, in the comment section, we noticed some atrocious messages, some disgusting, vile comments. And unfortunately, this conversation is necessary. And frankly, it's overdue. I'm sitting here with the chair of the provincial government, for Anti-Racism Committee. Hasan Alam is also a very accomplished lawyer, to say the least, co-founder on the steering committee of ILA and the president of the board of BC Civil Liberties Association. Hasan, thank you for joining us. It has come to my attention that somebody doesn't end up in a position like yours by accident. So I want you to walk through this with me. Who are you? And what got you inspired to be in the seat that you are today?
Well, first off, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. It's such a pleasure and honor to be in this beautiful space, which I just learned existed literally maybe a month ago. But it's a space that I personally dreamed of having when I was in undergrad myself, and I'm really glad, alhamdulillah, that you guys have been able to mobilize and make something like this happen. So let me start by saying congratulations to all of you for making the effort to do something like this. And to your question about how did I get here, I mean, I feel like it's a question better suited to have with my counselor, like it's such a deep question. And I think, you said, does this happen by accident? Honestly, sometimes it does feel like it's by accident, but everything is written, and this is where my path led me. I am the son of Pakistani migrants who came here in the late 70s. I was born and raised here on these territories, and never really thought about going into law. I was kind of an undergrad, and we'll get into this. I was going to undergrad post 9/11, and it was an atmosphere of politicization, an atmosphere where being a Muslim itself was a political act. And I think the thing that I knew deep down was that I wanted to do something for my community's rights. And there was other lawyers at the time who were doing that sort of work. One of them is in the crowd right now, Zul Suleiman, who I had heard speak about, young Muslim men being detained indefinitely. And I think those sort of instances really mobilized me and inspired me to do something where I could attain some tools in the form of a legal education to help my community. So that's a long-winded way of kind of talking about, and the rest just kind of came from passion and interest as well.
Alhamdulillah, I think Allah just kind of puts the opportunities in front of the people that need to do the work. And not to date you, but when 9/11 happened, what kind of lifestyle were you living? Like, what was going on in your head? What were your peers going through at the time?
I mean, it was an interesting time, right? I was just starting undergrad at Simon Fraser University. Personally, it was a point where I was myself rediscovering my faith, as many people were at that point in time. I was probably like 19 or 20, and the towers fell, right? And overnight, I think many of us in the community, whether we wanted to or whether we didn't want to, became politicized, right? We didn't have the choice. If you had the name Hassan, or you had the name Muhammad, or you had the name Bilal, whatever, you had no choice but to learn about your rights, because if you didn't, the state would take them away from you. There was that sort of threat at the time, and I got involved with the community on my campus. Right, I was a president of my Muslim Student Association at SFU, and even though we were a faith-based organization, it felt like we were also a political organization, because we were constantly mobilizing on campus and having conversations around how do we protect the rights of our community during this time where Muslim sisters are literally having the hijabs yanked off their head as they go to class, or being spat upon, right? Or Muslim men are being physically assaulted in prayer spaces, right? So those were the sort of conversations that we were having at the time, and it was a time of fear, but it was also a time of mobilization.
Yeah.
The community was coming together to really have this conversation about, for years we've thought we're safe in this country, but that safety is no longer here, so what do we do?
Unfortunately, leaders within our community and whatever work they do, they're forced to wear multiple hats. One thing that you did, which is very commendable, with of course the help of your peers, was to start an organization so that it goes beyond you, and that you can actually pass something on. And that's why we're having this conversation, is the Islamophobia hotline that has been made. I believe it was started in 2016. What kind of ducks did you have to put in a row, if as a lack of better terms, but to make something like this happen? I know it's not easy to do something like this.
I mean, yeah, it's our 10-year anniversary, right?
That's amazing.
It's hard to say that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a long road, and I will say that I was one of the co-founders, but there's many other individuals that actually led the way to make this hotline happen. Some of them who aren't even Muslim, who are just people who were seeing what was happening around them at the time and wanted to do something about it. And I think I should touch upon the sort of political moment that we were in. It was the end of the Harper government, on the heels of that government being taken out by the liberal Trudeau government, but there had been a lot of Islamophobia under the Harper government. Literally, the government proposed starting a barbaric cultural practices hotline, where you could report on your Muslim neighbor. That's literally
a snitch line
where you could report on your Muslim neighbor.
Yeah.
And that's how politicians were openly speaking about it. We saw in 2013 or 2014, we saw a 40% rise under the Harper government in Islamophobic instances, right?
So that was actually my introduction to Islamophobia, unfortunately, was this snitch line, where one of my friends, it was a toxic relationship, he got out of it, and it was so easy for someone to just blame him and say that this is who he is. And they approached me as a friend and said, why is your friend, or who is your friend, cornered me at my own home. And that's the conversation that was had with me. And to now contextualize it as to how that happened in this conversation, really kind of, it's like a click, like, wow, that it's very organic how these things happen. Doesn't happen in like a vacuum. This stuff requires effort, whether it's pro or anti.
And we readily forget, right?
Yeah.
Like, we forget that at a time the government in power was proposing a hotline like this. And I think our memories are short-lived. And I think it's really important to reflect on those moments because we need to be vigilant.
So
right?
what is the Islamophobia hotline? What is this effort that we're trying to go through?
So a coalition of lawyers and organizations got together and said we need to do something, right? And I think we as a group identified that there was a real gap in people who are impacted by Islamophobia around what they can do. Many of the people impacted by Islamophobia are new immigrants. They come from low-income backgrounds, just don't know about their rights, and don't have the proficiency around what are the systems that they can access to get some sort of remedy to the Islamophobia that they've experienced. So we came together and formed this hotline, literally off the side of our desks, right? We were lucky enough to have a wonderful organization at the time named Access Pro Bono, which we still partner with, provide their volunteers to us to answer the hotline. But then we had a roster of lawyers, volunteers, all volunteers saying, yes, if someone calls a hotline and it's criminal related, it's immigration related, it's employment related, send them our way and we'll provide free and confidential legal advice to this person in multiple languages, right? We had volunteers who were proficient in different languages at the time. So it was the first of its kind at the time. There is other sort of resources that have popped up over time, but the response from the community was immediately positive, right? We started getting calls from people being like, this is what I need. Right? This is
this is what I need. What are they calling in? What are some of the calls that you're getting from the hotline?
I mean, it's varied. And it's a broad spectrum of calls that we get, right? Sometimes it's somebody who's saying, hey, I was in the classroom and my teacher said a really Islamophobic thing. Sometimes it's someone in the workplace saying, I got fired and I think there's Islamophobic reasons behind it, or it's hate driven. someone's denied a promotion. Sometimes it's someone on transit saying, hey, some bus driver didn't let me get on the bus because I was wearing a hijab, right? It's unfortunately, Islamophobia shows up in a variety of spheres within our society. Sometimes it's not even Islamophobic, the incident, but it's a Muslim that's dealing with an issue, and we direct them to where they can get a resource. Unfortunately, within our community, there isn't a lot of resources where people can turn to when they're seeking help.
What is like, I'm a big person who believes like in emotion. What is the tonality of the calls? Like when they reach out to you, how are they reaching out? From what point in their life are they really calling you from?
Well, we have our program coordinator in the crowd, Sava, who probably is more familiar with the tone of it. But when we hear about these calls, obviously these people are coming from places of desperation, right? They're in a really tough point in their time. People don't call the hotline when they're happy, unfortunately, right? And we do get a lot of hate calls, actually, too. I would say 50% of our calls are actually hate calls. People
so a lot of your resources are just being diminished by these haters.
Yeah, I mean, we luckily don't let our energies be drained by these individuals, but it's just a sign of where we are at in this current moment. So, people are struggling, and we try to pair them up with the right lawyer to provide them with assistance, and they're always incredibly thankful for it. And as time has gone on, we've been trying to get our name out more in the community, and something that we'll get into maybe later is I do believe that we're an underutilized resource in this community.
I'm looking right here, and it says that religion-motivated hate crimes rose 154% from 2020 to 2023, and stayed there in 2024, but then there was a significant actually uptick in the year 2023 after October 7th. So we spoke a little bit about 9/11 and the causes that led you to become the man that you are, standing up for the community. But as you were deep in your career, you noticed the shift in 2023, October 7th. How would you describe this?
Well, I think Islamophobia has always been there, right? We talk about spikes, we talk about rises and falls. I mean, we're talking about statistics there, but on a societal level, we know that Islamophobia is always present, right up until the events of October 7th, 2023. We did see an incredible spike in that moment. And I think that was a real paradigm shifting point for a lot of people. For those of us that experienced 9/11, it was reminiscent of 9/11. It was a reminder, a rude awakening of the fact that we think we live in a society where we are equal citizens, where we have freedom of expression, we have equal rights, but that rug was pulled out from underneath us. Because in the wake of October 7th, those who spoke out against the genocide in Palestine, those who were Muslim in public were associated with what happened on October 7th, right? So people's rights were being rampantly violated in the wake of October 7th. And individuals who, I'm not just talking about your everyday person who's in the classroom or on the street. We're talking dentists who made Twitter posts at the time, right? And we'll get into this later, but obviously anti-Palestinian racism is distinct from Islamophobia, but there are overlaps around it, right? And we know that people who have come from a Muslim background are readily more targeted for anti-Palestinian racism than those who aren't.
And not to put fear in the minds of bigots, but I believe we have become stronger. We are creating these networks and relationships within our community. What can we tell to our own community to give them a bit of confidence to step up and actually reach out to us?
Yeah, and I think before I answer that, I will say that this moment has been different than 9/11. When 9/11 happened, there wasn't an Islamophobia hotline, right? There wasn't a National Council of Canadian Muslims. There wasn't nonprofits and organizations that could resource the community in the wake of the rampant violations of rights that we were seeing. We didn't even have that many Muslim lawyers at the time. And the ones that were out there weren't practicing in areas where they could be of assistance to the Muslim community. This moment is different, right? We have those institutions. We have the hotline, right? We have Muslims now who are becoming lawyers, mashallah, and really lending their skills to the community. The other thing that we also have is social media, right? So now the community doesn't have to suffer in silence, right? We're seeing posts instantly after people are targeted, whether that's Islamophobia or other violations of their rights. So I do think this moment is different in that sense, that there is more connections between us. But the same sort of stuff applies where we need to be vigilant, right? Going back to your question about what we do in this moment. I think we need to be vigilant. We need to report things when they happen, right? We need to make sure that we are exercising the rights that we have. And I think this moment, even though in the wake of October 7th, 2023, we did see these rampant violations of rights, the paradigm is shifting, right? As people have filed lawsuits, as people have gone to court and actually won cases,
Yes.
you know, people are becoming more emboldened to actually speak publicly about what their political viewpoints are and to assert their identity as being Muslim. Whereas post 9/11, it was the exact opposite, right? People were changing their name to Mo from Muhammad, right? I remember I have a very visceral memory of my own parents telling me and sitting me down in the wake of that and being like, hey, maybe don't act too Muslim in public, right? I don't think those conversations are happening as much.
And one of the things is also the opposition has become very creative, and they're hiding a lot of their bigotry in anti-Palestinian racism. How much different is anti-Palestinian racism other than just general Islamic bigotry?
Well, anti-Palestinian racism targets people who are ethnically Palestinian or nationally, right? Who come from Palestinian origin, but more equally importantly, it also targets people who aren't Palestinian but advocate for the rights of Palestinians, right? So that's anti-Palestinian racism. Islamophobia, right, is targeting people irrationally out of a fear of Muslim and Islams, right? Like that's sort of the differentiating factor between the two.
And like, as a lawyer, what is the legal difference between the two, of calling something an Islamophobic attack or something like APR?
I mean, I think APR can go within the realm of discrimination, obviously, based on you know, your background or your race. More often, where we're seeing it pop up is within the sphere of political discrimination, right? Under for example, under the BC Human Rights Code, your political beliefs are protected underneath the code.
And is this
right?
like the freedom of expression?
Similar to freedom of expression,
Okay.
right? Freedom of expression, when we talk about it, is more within the Charter under Section 2B. But here in BC, under the Human Rights Code, which applies to everybody, not just public government institutions, right? Your political beliefs are protected. Now, it's a part of the Human Rights Code that's still being very much tested. But so technically speaking, your right to speak up, for example, about Palestine, or really any other political issue that you believe strongly about, is protected underneath the code. And you can file a human rights complaint if you feel like that right has been violated.
People are losing their jobs. People are hiding a lot of their identity. Even myself, at my workplace, I'm a school teacher, as you know. Every single principal in the school district was emailed from an account in London, UK, telling them that I am some sort of a Hamas supporter. And I was pulled in.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had a little bit of confidence to stand up and speak up. But what are we hearing from individuals in these workplaces? How many jobs are being threatened? And what are they doing what are we doing as a community to stand up against this hate?
I mean, unfortunately, we are seeing people losing their jobs. We see people being targeted. As time has gone on, we've seen more mobilization from our community, from whether it's lawyers or other organizations that are actually pushing back against these instances, which you know, often people are being accused of being, for example, anti-Semitic, whereas in reality what they're doing is asserting support for Palestine, right? So I think in that sense, it's just important to use the avenues that we do have and push back. Same goes for Islamophobia, right? We're still seeing people being targeted in the workplace for Islamophobia. And I think one of the things that we see at the hotline is underreporting, people not actually speaking up. And I think it comes from an attitude of, hey, I don't want to rock the boat, right? I don't want to be a troublemaker, whether it's in the workplace, in the classroom, wherever it is. And people being afraid to exercise that right that they have.
Yeah, speaking of like the different areas where people can run into these instances, we have interpersonal relationships where people run into people in a parking lot. Then we also have people in the workplace. What are some tools that individuals can empower themselves with to be ready, whether it be in a masjid, whether it be in like in day-to-day relationships, whether it be in a workplace, or just in general society with like politicians and trying to advocate to them?
Well, I think, you know, that's a bit of a two-part question. In the first sense, what can you do to safeguard your rights or be better educated? Well, we have the Islamophobia hotline, right? And this is a great time to plug it, is that we do have this incredible resource where if you've experienced it, right? You can call the hotline and get help. But secondly, we've also started doing more legal educational workshops, right? Know your rights workshops, where we actually go into spaces. We've gone to Victoria, we've gone into different parts of Greater Vancouver and done these workshops where we meet with the community and we tell them about what their rights are. Because there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of gaps in knowledge when it comes to that. And I think it's really important for us too, because we meet and also learn about what's happening within the community too. Right? And I think that's something that we as a hotline are very interested in, is because we are constantly pivoting and shifting based on what the community is experiencing in that moment. On the larger level, and I'm glad that you asked that question about lobbying government, I think that's a really important piece to the equation too, right? Because sometimes at the hotline, what I feel like we're doing, and this is the resource that we are, is we're constantly responding, right, to the harm that's being done in the moment. So someone experiences Islamophobia, they call our hotline. It's a bandage already on the harm that's been done. But like, I really am interested in shifting the conversation to in our community around what can we do to get ahead of this, right? How can we get our back up against, get our back off the wall and actually be more proactive so we don't have to deal with this anymore?
I have a bad habit of being an optimist, and I think we're on track of actually like overly optimistic. I'm very confident that our community is strong enough. I know that we have champions within our circles, not even that far out of reach, who can take these challenges on themselves. I think you're right. It's just a matter of continuing the work and just talking to one another, staying in tune with our conversations online, subscribing. Do you have a newsletter? Is there a newsletter at the Islamophobia hotline? Something we got to work on.
See, I'm getting ideas from you already.
Amazing. There's a lot of partners you work with, and not to like diminish any work you do, but like, what are some adjacent entities that exist that we can work together that other people can tap into, so we can unify our resources?
I mean, there's a lot that's popped up, right? There's the ones within the Muslim community, such as, of course, the National Council of Canadian Muslims, Stop Racial Profiling. .ca, is that what it is? There's that incredible resource in the community as well. But aside from that, I think there's also like the BC Civil Liberties Association, right? It's not necessarily a quote unquote Muslim organization, but it's been an organization that's been at the forefront.
That's actually very important that you mentioned this, because a lot of times we get stuck in this echo chamber, and actually that's what's happening on the other side, and that's why all this hate gets concentrated, is because people are stuck in echo chambers and we're not willing to step outside of our comfort zone and engage with people on just a human level. It's beyond Islam, it's genuine inclusion. So what can Muslims do to empower their community beyond educating themselves on Islamophobia?
I think doing exactly what you're pointing to is we wait until something hits us in our community, then we respond to it, usually Islamophobia, and then we forget about it, right? We don't be like, you know what can I do to stop this? And I'm not trying to place the blame on our community, right? Like, no one deserves to be a victim of Islamophobia, and no one who experiences Islamophobia is at fault for causing it in the first place, right? That is something that is systemic, it's racist, right? It's something that happens on a systemic level and that should stop, period. But I think as a community, we need to start building coalitions with organizations that are outside of our immediate ecosphere, right? We need to build associations with organizations like the BC Civil Liberties Association. We need to get involved municipally with politics. We need to get involved on all levels of politics as well, right? And we need to be more vocal and talk about this, right? And not just talk about it when it happens, but to actually build spaces such as this one, right? It's a beautiful space, right? Where the dialogue is continuous, right? And where we're also opening up, for example, our masjids, right? To have conversations about this, not just calling politicians in, on Friday to give their pitch about why you should be voting for them, and they mention the word Islamophobia and that's it. Right? But like, how much are we actually creating space to have dialogue within that? I'm surprised by the number of times where we, as a hotline, go into masjids or other Muslim spaces and we hear people say, wait, is Islamophobia actually a thing? And I'm blown away by that response. And to me, that's an indication of a multitude of things. A, privilege, right? Because often those who ask that question come from privileged backgrounds where they don't have to worry about Islamophobia. Someone like me, right? Like I now as a lawyer, in the positions that I have, it's very unlikely that I would experience Islamophobia. Unfortunately, it's the people who are most marginalized that are experiencing it, right? So are we making space for those individuals to have those conversations and to actually dedicate resources and time towards it. I don't think we put enough time and energy into doing that.
Okay, just a couple of fire questions. It says, the BCCLA advocated for Muslim men that were detained after 9/11, long before it was possible. Now, Muslims, we sit on these boards. What words of encouragement beyond what I just said
But
can you give people?
I'm going to push back on that because you said we Muslims. I'm the only Muslim on the board of the BC Civil Liberties Association, right? So I don't think there's enough of us on there. And I'm not saying sitting on a board is the solution either, right? But if we're actually talking about civic engagement, right? Let's be real about how much we actually do that. I don't think we do enough of it. Right?
What are some steps that we can take, like actual steps beyond, work hard and you'll make it happen? What are some avenues? Should people volunteer more? Should they be reaching out to different political parties? What physical steps can our youth that are watching this?
Look, I think a big physical step is to support the organizations that are already there, right? And I'm not just saying that because I'm part of one, but I think why reinvent the wheel when it's there, right? So go support StopRacialProfiling.ca.
Yes.
Go support the Islamophobia hotline. Support msfr-ca, right? Help you guys be a sustainable organization, inshallah, that actually exists into the future and provides the space that you're providing, right? Why don't we invest, political energy into this? And I think, that's a very multi-layered sort of thing, right? We are the children of immigrants, right? Our parents came here with dreams for us where they dreamt that we would become doctors and engineers and lawyers too. I didn't become the type of lawyer that my parents wanted me to become, but I became a lawyer regardless, right? And our parents dreamt of us not having to worry about the things that they worry about, right? And hence they ingrained within our community this model minority mindset where we would climb the ladder without looking down and seeing those who are underneath us, but also those of all of the sort of tribulations that we had to go through to get here, right? And I think we need to really think about that, right? And use the privilege that we've accumulated to make sure that things like Islamophobia actually stop happening.
One of my mentors, he's on the board of the Foundation for a Path Forward. He told me that true leaders anticipate, we don't react. And I'm looking at you, I see a leader. What do you anticipate that we need to prepare ourselves for within the next couple of years?
I think we just need to be able to look into the future and actually proactively think about stuff past Islamophobia, right? Like I as a person am so tired of talking about Islamophobia, even though it's something that I'm passionate about and I want to stop, but I really want to dream of a future where we don't have to expend all of our political, financial, and emotional resources into talking about prejudice all the time, right? Like I sometimes think, like, if Islamophobia wasn't there, like, what else could I have been doing with my life, right? Maybe I'd be an amazing chef or an artist, or I've written
modeling
a short
GQ, buddy.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. But I've written a short story, right? But I think it's sad, right? It's sad that generation after generation has to expend so much energy talking about this thing. So I think we should be brave enough to have these conversations about Islamophobia, to be proactive in pushing back against it, but also dream of a future where we can talk about, public housing, right? Transit, right? Welfare, free childcare,
fisheries,
right? Fisheries. Like there is a breadth of things that we can be having these conversations about, and that's what I really dream about as well.
Okay. A lot of our viewership are young professionals who are on their way to success, but what they do have is access to leaders, whether it be imams, directors of different charities. What messages should they pass on to these leaders on our behalf?
You got me thinking. I think the first thing that people who are looking to become lawyers or young and aspiring to do things is you don't always have to depend on our leaders, right? Like I think we have a leader dependent mindset in our community where we think that we have to follow those who are in power. I think you yourself are empowered. And I think in this moment right now, given the resources that we have available at the tip of your fingertips, whether that's AI, social media, whatever it is, you have an incredible wealth of tools. So do what you want to do, right? I think this space is a testament to that, right? It's a beautiful third space outside of the masjid, right? Which is empowering people. Do stuff more like this. To leaders, I say make space, right? Make way for those who may not have the same political viewpoint as you, may not necessarily at times have the same religious viewpoint as you at the times, because as a community we know the differences that we exist. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And that's something that our community needs to be better at, is like, it's okay to be uncomfortable within our spaces. That will create space and allow youth to come in and do what needs to be done in that moment.
Okay, and that kind of answers the question I was going to ask you in regards to, like, what is the hotline not doing that we need to step up to do?
I think the hotline is trying to do its best to be a resource to the community. As I said at the beginning, we're underutilized. So I think to the masjids out there, right, to the community centers out there, to all of the Muslim organizations out there, this is an underutilized resource that can really help people. So talk about it, right? Spread the word about it. Post about it.
Yes.
Right?
Take up space.
Take up space with it, right? And really, when people experience Islamophobia, tell them that this resource exists and that we're here to help in that moment.
Our time is coming to an end, but I do want to ask you, to the person who experienced something and stayed silent, what is your final word to them?
Well, I think I have a lot of sympathy for them, right? Because I don't think that silence comes out of choice. I think that silence probably comes out of fear, right, of speaking up. They've just been through something traumatic too. So sometimes the trauma itself can lead to silence. What I would tell them is that they're not alone, right? That there is people out there who can assist them and to help them and to stand with them, and that they don't have to go through that on their own, right? And we here at the hotline would happily, rise to the occasion to give them whatever sort of remedy that they're seeking.
Okay. And you heard it here. This is Hasan Alam, the president of the Islamophobia hotline, and spread the word. 604-343-3828, free, confidential, and legal. I do want to open up the floor for a few questions if anyone has them in the audience.
Questions and comments too. We have some very learned individuals. I'm really curious to hear from this crowd as well around their thoughts, because we've covered a lot of different things. Yeah.
Just to go over that point you mentioned of 9/11 and comparing now, I think you made a good point that the social landscape is different. We have more representation, but my question to you would be, even nowadays, do you see a general spike in Islamophobia? I know I asked you this question before, but does Islamophobia spike throughout the year? Are there times where it's more rampant? Is there anything politically that charges it, or do you think it's just a general thing that comes to a rise?
Look, I think throughout my years of involvement with advocating against Islamophobia, I've learned one thing. Stats and statistics are incredibly helpful, right? Data is what we need at times to actually point to something and say, hey, look, it exists and it's happening, and it helps us to advocate for policy and for change. I'm always hesitant to speak about spikes, because even if we're not seeing a spike in statistics, what I've learned is that thing still exists on the ground, right? People are still experiencing Islamophobia regardless of whether we're seeing spikes. But to answer your question, yes, of course, there's political events that lead to more Islamophobia, right? October 7th being the prime example of it, right? And the reason for that is very multidimensional, but one of them is that we see an increase in Islamophobic tropes of Muslims in the community being used in the media, by politicians, by people in society, pundits, whatever you want to call them, to really put the Muslim community into a box as well. I think, one thing we didn't talk about, and I think I really want to comment on this, is that I'm really hopeful by the way that I see this generation, not to date myself, this generation responding to Islamophobia. Because post 9/11, the response that largely came from the community, not everybody, right? But a large chunk of the population, it was a very apologetic response, right? It was Muslims almost apologizing for being Muslim, saying, hey, sorry that bad Muslim over there did something. I'm a good Muslim, right? And I don't associate with those people. Come learn about Islam. It's a religion of peace, right? And I'm not a bad terrorist, neither is my community, right? All of those things, I guess in principle, can be true, but why does an individual who's Muslim have to respond? Why did we have to respond in that way, right? When white men walk into a church or a synagogue or a mosque, such as in Quebec City, and shoot up the place and kill people, we don't turn to all white Christians and ask them to apologize on behalf of their religion. We're not seeing that sort of response from this generation, right? This generation is saying the exact opposite, saying, hey, I'm Muslim, I'm proud, right? Don't profile me, don't associate me with everyone else, right? And also we need to dig deeper as a society to really go into why these sort of things are happening in the first place. So I think that's something that really brings me hope in this moment, that people aren't reproducing that apologetic sort of cycle that we're seeing.
And you did actually mention something, but I wanted to ask you a little bit deeper, is what allies do we have outside of the Muslim community? Who is marginalized with us?
It's a really good point. That's a really good point. And I think that's another thing which I see happening now, which didn't really happen post 9/11, is that intersectionality, that recognition that, you know what, Islamophobia at the end of the day, it's really just racism, right? And it's racism that we saw the Asian community experience post-COVID, right? The giant spike in anti-Asian racism, people from Black and African descent experience in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And so I think those connections are really being brought together, right? In Canada, we're talking a lot about, hey, what is the colonial history here and the displacement of Indigenous people? How does that connect to Islamophobia, right? And our generation is willing to say the two words that we were scared to say, which is white supremacy, right? It was a taboo to say that word, but really it's the systemic cause of so much of this.
We were talking about this. It's unfortunate. It's low IQ echo chambers that dominate the social media sphere. And we need to create more content. We need to create more connections within the Sikh community, the Muslim community, the Hispanic community for that matter. A lot of migrant communities that are now entering Canada get bottled into 100%. These refugees and whatnot.
And often these are the communities that are advocating for us too, right? If we're not advocating, it's often people from those communities that are speaking up for us, right? Whether it's in the halls of power and government and law, whatever it is. But yeah, I'm happy to hear more comments and questions though from the crowd. Yes.
I know you spoke a little bit about some of the information you saw or faced during your undergrad, but as someone who's in undergrad right now and is planning to go to law school, I was wondering if during your journey, like your career, like getting to your career, did you experience any Islamophobia? Not even just Islamophobia, but sometimes you have like experiences where you have to balance these thinking how to balance it, which ones are bigger than the other, stuff like that. And I know you're very active in your community, so have you seen a difference in the experiences you faced while you were getting to your career and stuff that you maybe now are facing?
No, that's a good question. Yeah, I think when I went into law school, I was the only Muslim in my class at the time, right? And so that unto itself can feel very alienating, right? Especially because often in these sort of spaces, you know, there's certain things that are expected of you, to show up in certain places, to act in certain ways, right? And even when you went to these, you know, mixers where you're meeting with other lawyers, you're not really meeting other Muslim lawyers, right? You're just kind of out there by yourself with someone looking at your name tag and being like, how do I pronounce that name over there, right? Like a lot of those sort of conversations happening. And I think that continued into when I became a lawyer too, right? And I did experience, I experienced blatant Islamophobia when I became a lawyer, right? People making, I remember I was at this law event and someone looked at my name and said, are you related to Saddam Hussein? You know, like, just like stupid, but also bewildering Islamophobic comments like that. But I do think it's changed. I think now we actually have Muslim law associations, right? And law schools popping up. We have more people going into law from the Muslim community, right? And we have the Canadian Muslim Legal Association, something that didn't exist when I was there, right? So there's more space for us to exist. And I think that's very hopeful for me. Within my own family, I have like 5 new lawyers that are there, yeah.
I have a two-part question. Firstly, have you heard of or have there been any reports related to, like Islamophobic reports, related to the resistance that a lot of like Muslim families are trying to, I guess, like, resist against the SOGI curriculum that's been in BC schools lately?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting and very complicated question as well, right? I think within the realm of SOGI, right, like obviously individuals have the right to voice what their political viewpoint on that is, right? And we have heard, not the hotline itself, but I'm just speaking anecdotally myself, right, of of certain people being labeled a certain way because they may not want their child to go through the SOGI curriculum, right? Like it being attributed to them maybe being backwards or Muslim and stuff like that, right? And I think that's like a place where there can be dual education and dual conversations happening, right? I think we need to make more spaces there to really meet with these parents, right? And talk to them about what their concerns are, right? And alleviate maybe any sort of things that viewpoints that they might have, or vice versa. So I haven't seen it at the Islamophobia hotline necessarily, but I know those conversations are happening.
So just to follow up with that, that second part of that question, I guess, like, how would you, like you said, have that dialogue? What is one way to, like, kindly and openly put it, while still not being like apologetic, as we were talking about earlier?
So you're saying how you as a parent would assert that you don't want your child to go through?
Yeah, or just supporters of the curriculum.
Support. Sorry, I don't understand. Supporters of the curriculum.
Yeah, like let's say I'm a parent and I want to speak to other parents about like my discomfort with the curriculum being taught in BC schools. How would I respectfully create that dialogue without being like apologetic about my own beliefs?
Yeah, look, I can't profess to say that I know enough about that. It's kind of related to Islamophobia tangentially, but not quite. I would say that as someone who's navigating that space, our freedom of expression rights end at the point of other people's rights. So I think respect is probably the number one thing, right? Is that you have the right to assert your political viewpoints, your values, as long as you're being respectful of others. And the same applies to those who might be asserting, for example, the SOGI curriculum, right? They also have to be respectful on the other end.
I'm a school teacher.
Yeah.
And you as a parent, are allowed to take your kid out of certain classes. That is, it is not illegal for you to tell your kid to stay at home or to just not attend a certain course. Alhamdulillah, we're not sending kids to internment camps. These are public schools where the education, 99% of it, is amazing. It's like, wow, it's lovely. And frankly, I don't think we should pull kids out of this education. We as Muslims, we should step up and teach our kids what our deen, what our faith is truly about. Because when we step outside of these schools and if we keep pulling our students away from these conversations, we don't prepare them for the real world. These kids, they will graduate. They will go into these public spaces. And if they're not exposed to it at a younger age and they don't know how to deal with these conversations, they'll be left stranded and wondering, what should I do now that I'm an adult in a workplace? So I always encourage people that to maintain their kids, to keep them in public schools. Because funny enough, I met 4 different kids in my limited time as a high school teacher who converted to Islam because of the Muslims that are in these classes and in these spaces. So what we need to do, actually, we can take them out, but I'm going to push this and say, teach your kids, spend time with them. If you have an opposing opinion, if you have belief that you need to teach your kids or there's something, take authority. These are your children, educate them. I'm going to throw this at you.
So I have a question about something that's a little common, I guess, just for Muslims in general. And I think it's just like overall fear. Obviously hijab's like obviously one of the big ones. It's visible. But for example, like as a man, right? Like I guess when people see me, they may not see Muslim. But for example, going to go pray. That's like at work, right? Having that, like I'm just being experienced. Sometimes it's like you have this like anxiety just saying, I'm gonna go pray, for example. I guess my question is, how can you, and I wrote this down, like how do you just like stand up for who you are? How do you like stay authentic to yourself while not feeling like that fear, if that makes sense?
No, it's a really good question, especially within the example that you gave of you're a Muslim in the workplace and you just want to go pray, right? And how do you kind of break the ice on that with your employer or with your boss? I think the starting point is acknowledging and realizing that you have the right to pray in the workplace, right? It's under what we call the duty to accommodate, where an employer has to accommodate your needs, religious needs, to the point of undue hardship, right? And I think that's really key, right? Is, if we're going to be saying, hey, it's Dhuhr time and I need to go pray Dhuhr right at the time that Dhuhr happens, you need to let me go away. That might be pushing it a bit, right? But within the time frame of what's permissible to pray your Dhuhr prayer, right? If your employer can shift your break around, shift your lunch around to make that happen, that's a right that you can assert, right? And again, it's a case-by-case basis depending on what your job is, the duty to accommodate analysis and what undue hardship will be. But I think that's a starting point. But I think the point that you're getting at is not just the legal one. It's also just the sort of societal pressure that we feel to fit in, right? And I think what I say to people all the time is, people around you are fitting in just fine, right? And they're fitting in through their, racial, religious sort of context, right? Why can't we as Muslims also feel like we have the right to fit in, right? We live in a country which professes to, promote the model of multiculturalism, right? Where we're a milieu of different identities and we exist. So I think we have that right? And I think it can be hard, but that conversation can start behind closed doors with your boss, with your supervisor, to say this is something that's really important to me. And I do think that's something that's growing. And I do think that maybe 10 years ago, it was a conversation that didn't happen that often, but I would like to think it's a conversation that's happening more and more now, and that employers are actually accommodating of that and are promoting that under the whole lens of EDI and whatnot, despite all the pushback that's happening against that. So I think we just need to lean into that discomfort and make it happen, right? And know that it's your right to do that as well.
Just approach getting caught with your foot in the sink with a little bit of finesse.
Yeah, then you can advocate for the wudu center being built in your washroom, right? Yeah.
A couple of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I was wondering if a little lower. I was wondering. It's kind of a broad question, but how?
So if you just speak up louder.
Sure.
Yeah.
How do you think we should go about balancing between addressing the hardships and discrimination we face as Muslims here, without actually letting it define our identity as Muslims here through a kind of victimhood lens?
It's a great question, and I honestly I don't know if I have the answer, and it's something that I struggle with myself. Right, like I said, I'm so tired of just always talking about Islamophobia wherever I go. Right, I should just wear a badge that says "Ask me about Islamophobia." Right, I'm tired of that because for the reason that you said is like it just becomes our identity, right? And we only make the news clips, the media, the radio when it's Islamophobia, right? And we don't make the news, we don't make media, we're not in movies when we're just being us, right? We're just being human, we're just being Muslims and thriving. I find hope in the fact that there is now more and more movies and TV shows and even music that's coming out that just is about being Muslim, right? And not necessarily, exactly, Miss Marvel, right? Like a Muslim superhero, right? Not fighting Islamophobia, but fighting, all the other bad things in this world. So I think we just need to lean into that, right? And tell our own story and tell the stories that aren't being told. And start waiting on others to tell those stories. And that's what I've learned from people like yourself, from filmmakers, from artists, is don't wait on others to do that. You got to go do it yourself as well.
You said you didn't have the question answered. You just
That was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any final questions? Throw it back. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Hasan. Wow, we will do our due diligence to make sure that this message reaches the community. And I do want to invite everyone again next week. Hasan's not related to the speaker next week, but it's Hasan Alam. He's running for the mayor of Vancouver.
Definitely not related.
Definitely not related. Definitely not related. But tune in to the forum. Come back out next week. Let your friends know. This space is only as good as the people within it. So let's fill it up. Let's tell people about it. And when we do share this content, try to get it to as many people as possible. We don't do this for ourselves. Like Hasan said, alhamdulillah, he is prepared to meet all the people who are trying to throw this bigotry at us. But unfortunately, he is not everywhere. And we need to make sure that the message reaches the people and that we empower the future. And if you have youth, this space, we have it open Monday to Sunday. We have hot desks available for people with a dream, who are trying to work on a project. And we are not charging any money. This is a space specifically for you to come, empower yourself through getting connected through civic leaders. On Tuesdays, we bring entrepreneurs. And on Wednesdays, I teach about general leadership skills. I encourage everyone to share the message. Thank you so much, Hasan.
Thank you. If I can just say, it's been such a privilege to have this space, so thank you. I feel incredibly privileged. I do want to say that, I've spoken so much about, the work that I'm doing, but really, as we know, it takes a village, right? So like we have our program coordinator in the crowd, Sabah Ghost, does an incredible job of doing the work as well. We actually have Zul Suleiman here, who I mentioned. He's one of the co-founders of the Islamophobia hotline. And I got to give a shout out to Access Pro Bono as well, which is the organization that houses us and that really supports us. We have someone with a question already.
No, go. You can ask a question.
I actually really want to ask this question.
Okay.
How do you deal with as the times get worse and worse, there's a lot of things against Islam, that just make you even, they're putting doubts in you, there's constantly on social media, you're just saying Islam is a fake religion and this and that. So how do you keep your faith strong while
Wow. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri.
It's a good question. Like, I get it, right? Like, you do face that, right? And there is, unfortunately, a lot of anti-Muslim rhetoric that's in the sphere. I think I was talking to you when we even advertised this event, like the majority of the comments were Islamophobic, right? And I think, that's a very, my answer is very multi-layered, but I think spaces like this is what give me hope, right? Like being amongst other people from my community and engaging in dialogue and just being in their presence is what gives me hope, right? It's a reminder of what we actually are as a community, not what they portray us as in those spaces, and honestly, just having faith in God, right?
That's one of our missions is providing a space for suhbah. I am not a sheikh, but what I am is a Muslim brother, and I've realized that this conversation me and you are having is not unique. Like Allah can replace me, Allah can replace you in a heartbeat. This conversation that we are being targeted is being taken place in Dallas, Texas, is being taken place in New York. The same problem that you're facing is happening in London. And alhamdulillah that we are not isolated, that we have spaces that we can go to. And as long as we provide people with suhbah, confidence will come through. And if you do run into a problem, once again, our doors are open. Please reach out. And thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Lovely.